Welcome back, everyone. We are diving deep into some fascinating shifts happening right now in Taiwan's market, and wow, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on.
Issue #208 of the Mark Weekly Digest is going to be our guide today, and
Great issue.
it's highlighting some really major developments in
Yeah.
real estate, fintech, and even a hint of what's next for blockchain tech.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how these seemingly separate stories
Right.
are actually connected.
Yeah.
You know, they paint a picture of where Taiwan might be headed in the global market.
Totally. It's like each piece of news is a clue, and we're here to kind of put the puzzle together for you.
Absolutely.
So let's start with what's happening in Taiwan's real estate market.
Okay.
Mark Weekly Digest does not mince words, calling out some pretty big moves by the central bank.
Yeah, we're seeing interest rate adjustments, mortgage limits, all geared towards what they're calling a soft landing for the market.
Okay.
So in other words, trying to gently slow down those rapid price increases
Right.
without causing a crash.
Okay, that makes sense. But, thinking back to other housing crises, like what happened in Japan in the 1990s or the U.S. subprime mortgage crisis in 2008.
Right.
Are those valid comparisons?
That's a great question.
Or is Taiwan in a different situation?
That's the thing about economic history. It often rhymes, but it rarely repeats exactly.
Okay.
So while those examples serve as cautionary tales, Taiwan has some unique factors at play.
Okay.
Their regulatory system, for one, is much stricter when it comes to lending,
Okay.
which helps prevent a full-blown bubble like Japan experienced. Plus, property ownership patterns are different in Taiwan. And crucially, their central bank is being much more proactive this time around.
That's reassuring, especially for anyone in Taiwan hoping to buy their first home.
Right.
And speaking of which,
Yeah.
Mark Weekly Digest mentions some protections specifically for first-time buyers, right? What's the story there?
Absolutely, yeah. The government is trying to walk a tightrope here.
Okay.
They want to cool down speculation and excessive price growth, but they also don't want to shut out aspiring homeowners completely.
Right.
So these protections for first-time buyers are part of that balancing act.
It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But speaking of high-stakes situations, let's shift gears to the fintech arena.
Okay.
Mark Weekly Digest made it sound like a real nail-biter went down with this recent acquisition battle.
Oh, yeah, it definitely made headlines.
Yeah.
And for good reason. Two major financial institutions in Taiwan were locked in a struggle to acquire a third.
Wow.
And things escalated quickly with these really aggressive tactics, almost like a hostile takeover.
Really?
Yeah, it got to a point where the regulator had to step in
Wow.
and basically say, hey, knock it off. You're disrupting the market.
Wow, you don't see that every day. So who ultimately came out on top?
Well, one of the institutions finally backed down, allowing the acquisition to go through.
Okay.
What's really significant here is that this new combined entity is now the fourth largest financial conglomerate in Taiwan.
Wow.
That level of consolidation is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it will definitely have ripple effects on the industry.
Wow, that's a lot of power concentrated in one place, You have to wonder what that means
Yeah.
for the average person in Taiwan trying to, manage their money, right?
It's a valid concern, yeah.
Yeah.
More consolidation often means less competition.
Right.
And that's not always good news for consumers.
Right.
On the other hand, a larger institution could potentially have more resources to innovate
That's true.
and offer new services. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the long run.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. And speaking of keeping an eye on things, remember the NFT craze?
Oh, yeah, right.
It seems like ancient history now, but Mark Weekly Digest reminds us that Taiwan's experience with NFTs holds some valuable lessons even today.
Yeah, remember OurSong?
Huh?
That NFT platform that was making waves for a while?
Yeah, what happened? I thought things were looking up for NFTs in that part of the world.
It seems like their payment processor, Circle, decided to stop handling those types of transactions.
Oh, wow.
Which was a major blow to OurSong's business model. So
It's a shame.
yeah.
It seems like even with a lot of initial hype,
Right.
the foundation has to be there to survive long term.
Exactly. Which brings us to a fascinating development on the blockchain front.
Okay.
This time, coming out of China, they're going all in on something called the Chang'an chain, right?
Okay, I have to admit, I'm not familiar with that at all. What is it exactly?
So it's basically a massive national blockchain infrastructure project. Think of it as China's attempt to, build a foundation for a future.
Okay.
Where blockchain technology plays a central role in practically everything. We're talking supply chains, digital identities, you name it.
Okay, so China and blockchain.
Right.
That's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
I remember reading some speculation in Mark Weekly Digest about this potentially leading to China easing its restrictions on cryptocurrency. What are your thoughts on that?
It's tempting to connect those dots,
Yeah.
but I'd advise a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
Mark himself expresses doubts about that, and I tend to agree. China has always been incredibly cautious about any financial system
Right.
that they can't, tightly control.
Right.
And cryptocurrency, by its very nature, doesn't exactly fit that bill.
So if it's not about loosening the reins on crypto, what's the real strategy here?
Well, I think control, as always, is a key factor. This chain seems to be more about establishing dominance in blockchain technology itself. So China is essentially trying to position itself as a leader in this space, setting the stage for a future where they have significant influence over how blockchain is used globally.
So even though the average person might not be buying up NFTs like they used to,
Yeah.
the underlying technology is still very much a driving force in the global market.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting for everyone,
Okay.
even if you're not, a tech enthusiast.
So connect the dots for us. You
Yeah.
got my attention now. How do these power shifts in tech and finance, especially all this talk about blockchain, impacts the average person? What does it mean for someone who's just trying to, navigate daily life, pay their bills, maybe buy their first apartment?
That's the real question, right? Because technology, especially something like blockchain, doesn't exist in a vacuum. What we're seeing in Taiwan, this dance between regulation and innovation, it's like a microcosm of what's happening globally.
Okay.
The financial landscape is being reshaped, and whether you're directly invested in these technologies or not, you're going to feel those ripples.
So it's less about whether we're personally invested in blockchain or buying an NFT,
Yeah.
and more about how these shifts impact the entire system.
Exactly. Yeah, think about the way AI is already changing the game.
Right.
Mark Weekly Digest highlighted those new platforms from NVIDIA and HubSpot. But zoom out with me for a second. The bigger picture here is the massive global investment pouring into AI-driven data centers.
Wow.
That's going to have a ripple effect on everything.
Yeah.
How businesses operate, how services are delivered, even how we interact with each other online.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is.
That's for sure. But that's what we do here on the Deep Dive.
That's right.
We take these complex issues, break them down, and hopefully give you some food for thought.
And maybe inspire you to do a little digging of your own.
Always a good thing. So, as we wrap up our whirlwind tour of Taiwan's market, what are the key takeaways you hope listeners are walking away with today?
I think this deep dive really highlighted how interconnected everything is. We talked about real estate regulations trying to keep pace with market forces, a fintech battle that could reshape Taiwan's financial landscape, and this underlying current of blockchain and AI quietly revolutionizing everything in their wake. Taiwan seems to be at this inflection point, kind of riding the wave of these global trends. The question is, will they become a leader or get swept under?
Now that is a thought-provoking question to end on. What do you think? What stood out to you the most in our Taiwan deep dive? Where will YU be keeping an eye out for further developments? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit us up on our socials, and until next time, happy diving.